Okay, well, I think we've got everyone logging in here. We'll go ahead and get started. It's about 4 after, so I'm going to go ahead and get the ball rolling. I know some people are going to be joining us as we roll along throughout the night, but my name is Tyler Woods, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to another Masterclass Monday, another in our edition of Masterclass Mondays. This time we have special guest Jerome Stevenson. Jerome is a distinguished artist from Oklahoma. He went to Langston University. He has worked several times with Oklahoma Shakespeare in the Park over the years, playing distinguished roles such as Othello, Prospero, probably a couple of others. I don't know, maybe a couple of others with the Oklahoma Shakespeare in the Park. Certainly been working with us for many, many years. And he is the artistic director at the Pollard Theater, where he's been running that show for many, many years. You can see him up in Guthrie doing wonderful things up there. And currently you can see him in Lyric Theater's production of A Christmas Carol. He is in the fun role of Scrooge in their traveling production, which is out at the Harn Homestead going on through, I think, the end of December. Is that right? Yeah, so you can catch him as the inimitable Scrooge in a very different, unique, and very fun production out there. We're very lucky to have him here tonight. He's going to just go over a lot of different things and kind of make the class his own, as is the kind of the way that these have been going, which has been a lot of fun. We encourage participation. If you would like to turn your cameras on, we'd certainly would very much welcome that, because I know Jerome loves to see smiling faces staring back at him. And this is a very much a good participatory Q&A and that sort of thing helps with the class, and round robin and that sort of thing. So anyone who will be joining us later, we'll just go ahead and admit as we go on, but I am not going to take up any more of the valuable class time. I will just say thank you once again for being here, and welcome. And Jerome, I'm gonna hand it over to your able hands. Have fun.
How is everybody doing? Are you well? Are you going through craziness? Yeah.
Good.
Good.
Looking good. Thank you.
It's good to see all these familiar faces and some not so familiar, but hopefully I'll get to know you over the course of the evening. And we'll, when we talked originally about doing this, I thought, I don't really know what I would talk about. Like, what do you say? What do you, because I don't know what the group is like. I don't know the dynamic. I don't know the age range, but then I got to thinking about what was important to me. And so I'm going to have lots of stuff to ask of you. I am, as he said, all those things. I guess I'm an actor, I'm a director, I'm an artistic director. More than anything, I'm a student of theater, a student of the arts. And I continue to learn. And part of what happens in an environment like this is I hope to learn as much from you as to impart on you. I want to give you my perspective, which is a lot of what we'll talk about today, perspective. Because I think voices, what makes theater unique, what makes the arts unique is the varying voices that create it. Being able to see art from the perspective of someone who shares nothing like us, who doesn't look like us, whose gender is not like our own, whose religious and philosophical beliefs are not the same as our own, whose socioeconomic background is not like our own, because that's how we grow. That's how theater connects one patron to the other. It's about the shared experience. I think for me, theater is always about turning lights off and getting a bunch of strangers to engage in a single conversation where they all together go, or they all together go, oh my gosh, she's never going to see him again, or whatever that is, because that's how we know that we share DNA. We're part of the same human family. And if for no other time, we get to see our experiences collide and our roads collide with a whole plethora of Americans, even if we don't necessarily agree with them or share a look or share skin tones. So I'd like to start by one, warning you that I'm a fan of interactive, and two, by getting to know a little bit about you and who you are, and more specifically why you're here on this call. I'd love you to tell us your name, tell us how you're involved in the arts, why you're involved in the arts, and I show up on this Monday night when you could be watching Netflix or whatever it is, and then we'll kind of build from there. So just because you don't know what order you're in, I'm going to start with Maureen Harvey.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm Maureen Harvey, and I am an art therapist and an artist. And I was involved in musical theater when I was younger. And I thought when I retired recently from the VA Medical Center, and I thought when I retired, I would like to get back into theater somehow. And so I've been looking for just a place to just, you know, kind of look in on things. And I love Shakespeare,
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for showing up, Maureen. I appreciate that. I'm taking notes, so forgive me. How about Miss Krasinski? Hi, Chris.
Hello. So I'm Krasinski, and I'm here tonight because I'm working to stay connected to my theater family here during this time of COVID. I consider the folks that are a part of theater my tribe. I've never connected with another group of people the same way I have folks that are creating stories and sharing stories like you spoke about, Jerome, where we all come together and we think about something new or something in a different way, or we learn something that we didn't know before, and we hear another perspective that we wouldn't otherwise, that might be a little otherwise difficult for us to hear or see, or just impossible to know if it weren't for theater.
Right. Absolutely.
And
Thank you for that. Yeah.
That's, you know, that's a big part of when I saw this series that was available. I, you know, wanted to be a part of that. I got really excited when I saw that you were one of the presenters.
Well, I hope not to disappoint.
I'm sure you won't.
Thank you so much. I'm making a last note about something you said.
And I'm happy that I saw Chris Crane, I think. I haven't seen Chris in years, so it's nice to see him.
Isn't it nice when we still find ways to connect. We still find ways to share. I think that's fantastic. How about Miss Shannon Lockwood? Thank you, Chris.
Hi, I'm Shannon, and I work for Allied Arts, and I'm the employee giving manager there. And before I did that, I was a band director for 12 years. Ellie, hi. Good to see you. But a good part of my job now is storytelling, because I get to work with about 130 companies and go and talk about what's happening with all of our awesome arts organizations in Central Oklahoma. And Oklahoma Shakespeare is one of those. So while I'm not a theater person myself, I feel like a lot of what I end up doing with the storytelling, theater can help with that. So I'm really excited to be here. And then Jerome, of course, I saw that you're the teacher today. I'm like, well, shoot, I need to get on that call. Go. You're gonna kill it.
Well, I hope to bring some value to your blustery Monday night. How about Chris Crane?
Unmute here. Hello, I'm Chris Crane. I'm really excited to be here. Good to see Chris again. Back when COVID started, it kind of forced me into early retirement. So, which was not planned for me. I had planned on working for several more years, but it has kind of forced me to try to find avenues to keep my mind busy. I've been involved in theater since I was a kid, which was a very, 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 very long time ago, many varies. And it's always nice to connect and see people that I know. And I'm like Chris. I saw your name. I'm on the email list for all the theaters locally, and I saw your name. I said, I gotta see this. I gotta listen. So I'm here and excited to learn, because you're never too old to learn.
I'm grateful that you come. And I'm glad you're here to learn, and I'm looking forward to what I'm going to learn from you, which I am sure across the board is going to be much. Thank you. How about Jermaine Oldenheimer? Is that right? Did I say that right?
Yeah. Yeah, Germain. The G is like the second G in garage.
Oh,
Germain.
Jermaine.
Yeah. So, hi, Maureen. So I'm a retired physician, and I taught at the medical school. I've basically been a teacher my whole career, as well as seeing patients. And I always felt like teaching was a little bit like performing. I felt like the best teachers performed and told stories and things like that. So I thought this would be fun to explore. Plus, I've seen you, Jerome, in a number of shows, which I've enjoyed, and I got to see you propose to your wife.
Oh, wow.
So
Wow.
anyway, so I thought, okay, this will be fun. So
That's very cool. What a small world it is.
yeah.
Well, I'm certainly glad you're here today. Thank you so much for coming out and sharing this with us this evening. Lee Miller.
Hello, I'm Lee Miller, and I guess I'm on the call. I was involved in theater and musical theater and regular theater my whole childhood, young adulthood, and took a different track with my education and getting married and all those fun things. And with the onset of COVID, my career kind of came to an end rather abruptly. And I just decided, you know what? Life is too short to not do what you really love. So I have gotten back involved in theater. I'm currently in a show with Third Act Theater Company, and I'm looking to do more things. So I was very excited to see the Shakespeare thing happening with Allied Arts, and was excited to jump on the call. I haven't done Shakespeare in a very long time, but I have in the past.
Yeah.
So would love to do it again. Yay.
That's fantastic. I love that you took those lemons and turned them into something valuable.
Well, you know, it's what I always wanted to do. And I was like, well, now's not really the time to, I was in religious education. My husband's a pastor, and I have a master's in Christian ed, and I was working full-time at a church. And I also have my secondary teaching certification, and now it's just not the time to be in teaching. Sorry.
Right.
I have elderly parents, so no.
Sure.
And you know, this is what I want to do anyway. So heck, why not? My kids are grown. Time to do.
Right. Oh, awesome. Religious educator. Oh, wow. Let's see. That's Oklahoma Shakespeare. Is that Melissa Kessler? Melissa, do we not get to see you today? Are you there?
There we go. Sorry, my computer wouldn't unmute. No, my camera's not working properly today. I'm sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. We'll imagine.
That's all right. So I'm Melissa Kessler. I did theater all throughout school. I worked with you at the Pollard Theater. I did quite a few years there of technical work with you all. But then, of course, life got in the way, and so I haven't been able to be a part of the theater community for quite a few years. So I just thought with COVID, I've got a little bit extra time right now. It would be fun to participate in this and see where things might lead for my future.
Love it. Love it. Thank you. How about Jingwen? Is that correct? Am I saying that correct?
Yes. Yeah. Just like in Jingle Bell.
Perfect.
I'm just learning. My son, actually, I sent my son to theater school. And then we have watched Shakespeare in the park in the summer, in the past few summer, except this past summer wasn't. And he says, I was looking things online and I found you guys. So I'm learning. I don't have any background in theater.
That's okay. That's okay. We are grateful that you are learning and grateful that you're here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And then it looks like finally Miss Erin Honius. Hi, Erin. Are you there?
I'm here.
Hi.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm actually still working, so that's why I was like not on camera. I mean, I'm definitely not working. I'm 100% devoted to both things at once.
Sure.
Hi, I'm Erin Honius. I actually started doing theater when I was 15 with Shakespeare in the Park. So a little bit of history back there on that. Obviously, I have a degree in theater. I know Mr. Jerome, of course, originally from Othello. So Shakespeare in the Park is actually what brought us together initially. And then I always talk about the Pollard as my home theater. I was actually talking about the Pollard earlier today. Pretty much anytime somebody mentions Guthrie, I immediately am like, oh, I stage manage there. Like, I can stage manage. That's my home. So yeah, no, I've actually been wanting to join because there have been some really awesome people and like friends of mine that have been on these, and I haven't had any time because it's a really crazy time at work. But I couldn't pass it up. I couldn't pass up the chance to see my dear friend Jerome and just listen to you and have you teach us all the things.
Well,
so no pressure.
No, I was gonna say no pressure.
No pressure.
That's been a theme.
No, I miss people. Obviously, I'm like super immunocompromised, so I can't go places, and so this is my connection to theater, basically. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I told you a little bit about myself, and but I'm supposed to give you these kind of CV highlights. I graduated from Langston University. I took classes at Oklahoma City University. I took or University of Central Oklahoma. I now teach at Oklahoma University and Oklahoma City University. I have worked much across the state of Oklahoma and in many places across the region. I am a stage actor and director. Blah 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 blah. Insert educational things here. I bring that up because of this. For me, I think our CVs are valuable. They tell people where we've gone and who might know us. But as artists, they're not our resume, at least in my opinion. I think our resume is the life we've lived, the people we've come into contact with, the insights we've got into the world around us. Because I think what makes us valuable as artists and as storytellers specifically is if you're going to choose storytelling as your life, then you have to share your life in your storytelling. What I wanted to talk about tonight is particularly in light of all of the talk about diversity and all of the talk about inclusion and all of this stuff that's happened, is that's a great conversation to have. But what gets missed is we oftentimes want to form fit you, the artist, into the story I'm telling. And you have to tell it this way because this is the story that's in my mind. But what's most valuable to me is getting the story from your perspective and adding it to the story we're telling. I can't know the life that you have lived, Krasinski, but you've got insights into a world that I just simply don't. And if I could add your voice to mine as a storyteller, then we're able to reach a larger audience and touch them in a way that is more visceral and more powerful. And they think about that because there was something about you that told them the story that I simply couldn't have given them. I wanted to bring some examples, and some of these are kind of weird, but pop culture examples of places where you've seen a show done 1,000,000 times. You've seen 1,000 people play Lear. You've seen 100 people play Troy Maxson. You've seen 20 people play, Harold Hill. But each actor brings something unique to it, something that makes it more immediate, that makes it more urgent. And I just picked a couple examples from films because I thought maybe these are things that everyone has seen. Of course, everyone loves The Godfather. I assume everybody's seen The Godfather, everybody, big popular movie. And up until then, we'd seen all of these gangsters played, and you have Cagney and you have all the kind of greats you put on the thing and they give you the quality. But Brando's version of that was different. It was different because he had a different perspective on it. And so to prove his point, he stuffs his mouth full of cotton balls and shows Coppola, I got this idea that he's a bulldog. And he feels like this big, loving, warm pet, except for, deep down, he's incredibly dangerous. Of course, this is a role that Brando is almost of a certain generation. You can't not know The Godfather. You can't think of The Godfather without thinking of Brando. That unique element he brought to the film was because of his unique perspective. Now, because of that, the mouthpiece that they actually made from it is in the American Museum of Moving Images in Queens, New York, because he had such a unique perspective. I think about Sir Anthony Hopkins, and without fail, The Silence of the Lambs comes to mind. His performance is so riveting. First of all, there'd been another actor to play the role of Hannibal Lecter. That book had been out for a while. Brian Cox did the film, and Manhunter, I believe is the name of the film. But because of Hopkins' unique perspective, he had a friend, personally, who unnerved him often because he seldom blinked. And he said, I'm going to do that in the role. In fact, interestingly enough, Jonathan Demme had talked to him and said, I want you to play Hannibal Lecter because I saw you in The Elephant Man. And he said, and Hopkins' response was, as I understand the story, Hopkins' response was, the doctor in The Elephant Man is a very good man. He's a good man. And Jonathan Demme's response was, so is Hannibal Lecter. He's just trapped in the mind of a lunatic. And Hopkins said, it changed my whole vision of the piece. And so I never went back to another one of those, whatever people played when they played serial killers, what people played when they played crazy. And I found every way I could, every opportunity I could to make him a gentleman, to make him in some way kind in the midst of his insanity, to give him, he said, I took on the characteristics of snakes because that's how I saw him. He never blinks unless very specifically. And you watch the film. I actually had to watch the film after I heard that quote, and I thought, he really doesn't. He absolutely does. Like, that's the thing he brought to the piece. His perspective was so valuable. Again, he's in 4 scenes in the film, roughly about 30 to 40 minutes of the film entire. And yet that performance is known the world over. In fact, he's the #1 villain in AFI's list of 100 villains in film. He's the #1 person we think of. But again, that unique perspective, without it, that film's just not as good. It's just not as powerful. I think about Kathy Bates making her debut in Misery. And her sensibility in that film is so well known. Jimmy Caan talks about often how he found her in tears before as she's preparing to do the infamous hobbling scene and their final fight. But I remember thinking and having seen that film and saying, there's something so inherently kind about her. It makes this performance all the more disturbing. Because everything about her says she wouldn't harm a fly, except for that's what she's doing in the course of the work, is nothing but harm. Her unique perspective gives me everything. It's all that makes me that compels me about that performance. And because I wanted to talk about this, particularly in this era, with COVID, with Black Lives Matter, with all the talk of inclusion and diversity, and that's one of my least favorite terms, inclusion. Just FYI, when it comes to this kind of thing, I really wanted to talk about that because I find so much. I'm teaching at universities, and I find so much that the general thinking is we've got to get everybody to be. We're going to create artists that are like this. But I think if you're not careful, you take out the part of the actor that makes them most compelling. You take out the part of directors that makes their version of the story so unique. And that's the elements that make them them, their individuality, their perspective, their ideology, their wants, dreams, hopes, what aspirations, those unique, mystical, magical elements that make Germaine, right? Germaine, yes, Germaine. that makes Chris Kane Chris, that makes Krasinski Chris. And that's what I want us to kind of dive into. Even in our most basic stories, we understand that. Kids, when they are playing, play versions of themselves. They are themselves as the Hulk. They are themselves as Iron Man or as Princess Leia. But what makes them when you watch them, you never look at them and say they're the same character. There's a version of Captain America, there's a version of the Hulk, but they're so unique because all they know to bring to it is themselves, because they haven't been taught to be like anybody else yet. And that's what I wanted us to kind of dig into. I want to ask, is there anybody who has, because there's not a ton, I guess there's not a ton of people who might have pieces, but is there anybody who has pieces that they want to share? Monologues, readings, scenes that they're wanting to do, because I know that sometimes we have people, particularly in master classes, you have people who want to do a piece of work, and I want to make sure that I leave time for that. Oh, that's great. Fine with me. So that's our thematic idea for the night. I hope that meets with your approval, and I hope you've got some thoughts about it. So I want to go around the room again. Charmaine.
I'm curious how you feel about people who play roles. For example, say a straight person who plays a gay person, or a transgender, someone who plays transgender who isn't transgender, or someone who is, isn't Native American who plays Native American or Black or whatever. I'm just curious how you see that, because there's a lot of controversy over who should play those roles.
There is, and like any other red-blooded American actor, boy, do I have opinions. And I'm going to share this with you, because I think that's a great question. Thank you. But I also want to share this. This is a safe space, in my opinion. It's a space where I don't have all the ideas. I'm not going to share I don't think all the same things that you think. You don't think all the same things that I think, but I hope we'll hear each other out and leave room to disagree and do it respectfully. Here's what I think. I think there are some things that you cannot tell an audience that you are if you're not. I cannot play a white woman. I have tried. It does not work for me. The audience won't buy it. They just go, because you're not. Oh, but I am. Yeah, you're not. And that's just the end of that. And they disconnect. But you don't know my sexuality. You don't know my religious beliefs. You don't know my socioeconomic background. So if someone says to me, I want you to play a man who's been born of privilege, then as an actor, I want to say, sure, I want to try that. It's not my background, but I want to try it. If you say to me, I want you to play a criminal, believe it or not one. But let me tell you, I have spent a lot of time in my career getting that stamp. Oh, sure, you know what it's like to play a criminal. Do I? So I say that to say this. I think if you can bring an audience to that story through your work in a way that is respectful, then as an actor, I want you to be able to explore it. I want you to be able to do it. Do I want transgender men or transgender women to lose roles? No. I want everybody to get a piece of the pie, and there's a pretty big pie. But I also don't want us to limit artists and actors to what they are, because that is a really dangerous road. I'll only be able to play Black men who are 48, who are married to white women, who have one child. It will go on and on and on and on forever. And I think maybe I'm telling a story about a gay homosexual man who hasn't figured out how to deal with that yet. And I have a perspective on it that a director or a writer likes. Maybe I don't. Maybe there is a gay man who has it perfectly. And I think, get it, brother. But I don't want to say to you, oh, you're straight, you're gay. No straight men for you, sorry. Because the other thing I know about that from firsthand experiences is that stories are often told by the people in charge, and they find a way to leave the other people out of those stories. There are not a ton of musicals pre-1950 that feature people who look like me. There are not a lot of productions of Christmas Carol which feature African-American Scrooges, but I have a take on that character. So I think that is a great question. And I know that we are in a period in time where we are all about labels and all about trying to find where everybody fits. And I keep thinking, instead of narrowing it down, we really need to be expanding it. We are part of a human family. We have shared DNA. It's just so. If we don't find a way to open that up and stop finding ways to exclude, and I'll be the first person to say it, my least favorite term right now is straight white men. I don't know how straight white men became the target of all ire in the world, but straight white men aren't the only villains ever, period. There are wonderful straight white men. There are dark, dangerous straight white men. There are dark, dangerous brothers, Black men, and African-American women. And so not boiling them down to that nugget that is, you are this, frightens me, because it keeps us from seeing people. That was a long-winded answer to your question. Does it help? So I wanted to ask you, I wanted to go to this place. As storytellers, storytelling is our life. We need storytelling to exist. It's not just, it's an essential part of humanity. If we don't tell stories, we start from zero. One of our weaknesses as a culture is that we forget to tell the next group where to pick the ball up from. There's lots of people who don't know the civil rights experience existed. They don't know what women have done to get this far. And if we don't share those stories, they lose years, tens of years. So when somebody said earlier, I'm not an actor, I'm just a listener. We're all just listeners. We're all just storytellers. We're all just people. But this question doesn't become any less valid. And so some of you may have to dig, because it may be hard to identify this in yourself. Try. What's special about you? What's unique about you? Do you know? Have we thought about it? What about your voice hasn't been heard? I don't need you to go into personal details. I'm not asking you to reveal yourselves. But I would like you to think about what's valuable from you. Because if there's something valuable in you, and there is, then there is value in sharing it with someone else. And the question I'm asking you to kind of look at is, where do you have something to share? What's special about you? Does anybody have an answer to that question?
I'll speak up. And I'll tie it in with what we discussed last week with our instructor. She mentioned working with, is similarly to what you're discussing with us, our unique qualities and our perspective and bringing that to the story. She led us to identify those qualities about ourselves that are innate, that we know exist, that others have observed in us, and then find something interesting in playing opposite that. That's an interesting choice. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about that through the week and discussing, with some friends, because I have a tendency to think, well, I'm just a boring person. I don't have a unique perspective. That's not interesting. I'm just a plain person that's lived kind of a plain life, and I haven't done a lot of things. And but I happened to be visiting with a friend this week, and she was talking about, it was kind of ugly. She was talking about someone that she just, you know, she's not really interesting. And, you know, this person's just kind of a party poop. And I said, well, that's kind of what I am. You know, I'm a lot older than you and I'm kind of a, you know, bleh. And she said, no, you're very warm and you have this calming effect on our group of friends, and that is attractive. That attracts us to you. So whether or not you want to stay out late and woohoo, that's beside the point. We don't need that from you. That is what you bring, and that is what attracts us to you. And then I was just connecting that with characters that I've been able to play, and then with what we learned last week, and I thought, yeah, that I can see where that's an interesting choice for me to play somebody icy, somebody repulsive in her personality, and, you know, repellent and cold. And so I guess I'm thinking about that now as I'm processing, working with some characters and bringing that. Okay, so there are times when maybe I can explore that some more, that warmth, and what the motivation of that is that always something that is just innocent and natural, or is there something
Is there an
behind
alternative?
that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's that. That's something that.
Well, I mean, think about it. Like, even when you and I have worked together, you know, I've sat around the table and had discussions on Almost Maine, or talked about With a Wonderful, Wonderful Life. And I said, you know who's great for this? You know who's great is Krasinski. She can play George Bailey's mom. You'll buy it instantly. She can play Violet because there's a little bit of that warmth to it, but all she has to put on is ulterior motive, and it moves her into Violet. I totally buy that, but I also want to bring this to your point of view, and I'm so glad you went first, because you said something that's really powerful. You said, just a plain person. One thing I don't know how often we've worked together, but I don't know if we've worked together enough for me to say this, but I typically say it in every production process. I will say to actors, please don't ever use the word just with me, if you can help it. Because I don't think anything happens in a play when you just do anything. We don't have moments of just in a play. They're all extraordinary moments in the lives of ordinary people. And what happens when an actor says just, or when a person says does, is we tend to want to belittle. This is just belittling whatever it is. It's not that big a deal. The other thing that you said, which was really interesting, I don't go out late. I don't hang out and do these wonderful things, except for that is a product of how often we're designed to be like something else. Like what we see is, this person's great because they're a party person, except for you're obviously very thoughtful and very academic a little bit in your approach to things. You're a reader, yes. You're obviously an intellect. I wonder if people who are saying I party all the time aren't saying, well, I'm not an academic. What you are is perfect. It's the perfect version of you. It's the version that we need, just like your friend said. I'm glad you shared that. Thank you so much, Chris. We'll come back. Anybody else? What's special about you? Yes, Maureen, please.
Oh, Maureen, you go ahead.
Well, when I was younger, like in school and everything, well, I was studying art, and they would give the assignment, and then I would go home and I do the assignment, I come back and I totally got it wrong. And that happened to me over and over again. And then I had to come to terms with the fact that I spend a lot of time in my right brain. And so I tend to see the big picture in everything. And I hate working with details. I hate details. And I don't remember details. And so I'm afraid they're going to fall off my radar screen, and I'm going to forget them. I've had jobs where I had lots of details to deal with, and I was tortured by them. Art therapy was sort of a fly by the seat of the pants for me, because I would go up to the psych ward and go in and then have them draw a picture of anything they wanted to draw. And then we would take whatever came up and we would go with that and work with it and do therapy with that. And so I find, though, that seeing the big picture is very valuable, because a lot of times when I ask a question, people go, well, I hadn't thought of that. And so that's been interesting. Once I was able to embrace that I really, my mind is always looking at the bigger picture and is not so lost in the details. I can see that's valuable.
Oh my God, yes. Oh my God, that vision, seeing the idea as it forms from the outside. I can speak to this personally. Aaron Honius, who was talking about stage managing at the Pollard, is a detail-oriented person. And one of the reasons why I constantly say, hey, can you stage manage this thing? Because I know she's going to balance me out. Because I hadn't thought about what time the actor was called and blah, blah, blah. And she says, well, this person isn't here. And she kind of whispers it in your ear and you kind of go, okay, thank you. I didn't know that. And you can work. But without Aaron's brain for detail or somebody who at least is a third as good, I'm lost. I'm an absolute big picture kind of person. I love detail people. I think they're amazing. I wish I had their skill. I also know that I don't. But if nobody's seeing the larger picture, then we're all maybe stuck in the minutia and nobody's getting anything other than the scheduling and but who's imagining the what if, the magic what if I talk about all the time. Yeah, I think that's fantastic, particularly if you're an art therapist, which we'll have to talk more about that and how you pursue that, because I'd be real interested in seeing if there's some people I know who could get value from that. Anybody else? What's special about you? Shannon, I think you had
I'll share with you. So I think for me, in my presentations and things, I've been told before that my best trait is authenticity. And I think people see that because I allow myself to be vulnerable. And it happens pretty often when I'm giving a presentation that I'll be telling a story that really means something to me about someone else, and I'll cry. And I remember the first time it happened, because my job wasn't always storytelling. It used to be band directing. And sometimes I would talk about kids up on stage. Lee, I'm sure you were at some of those concerts, and I'd just be a bawling mess right before they graduated from high school. But now I'm telling other people's stories, and I'm, feeling the pain that they went through, or realizing the importance of what they've gone through all over again, and those tears come. And what I found is that in my relationships with other people, I can sometimes pull in that vulnerability too. And a lot of the time when people are talking to me, they'll tell me things that they wouldn't normally talk about. And I think it's because they feel like I'm open, I'm an open book, I'm a safe person. And if I'm being authentic, then they can be authentic back. So I think that's my special thing.
Wow. That's fantastic. I met you a couple of years ago, and we met for coffee and lunch. And I remember thinking to myself, there is a whole swath of people who I would love to engage in theater who have no interest in talking to me about theater. Because I seem from moment one like that guy. Oh, the blaze and the blah. And you go into businesses, people who a lot of times have no interest in theater, and they discover a passion for it through you. You said you're authentic. You authenticate and you advocate for the arts in ways that, I got to be honest with you, if you know many theater people, you'll know this to be true. They can't do it. They can't do it. Most theater people are designed to have something to say, and they go to a meet and grip and grin, and then they don't have any sense of, I don't know how to, well, it's nice meeting you. You'll notice when after you say, hey, you were great in the show. Thanks, I really appreciate that. Or thanks, I really appreciate that. Looking off the other direction. You bring humanity and authentication and authenticity to art in the middle of Oklahoma. Like, that's incredibly special. It's incredibly special. Anybody else? I'll make sure how much time I'm doing on time here. Here's why it's important to me. Erin, did you have something?
Oh, I got off work finally, so I can click on. I don't know. I do. I guess I feel like, obviously I'm very detail oriented, which is actually what I was going to say before you said that, which is funny. which is nice, but also I feel like I've been through a lot. Like there's a lot of really personal, really traumatic things that have happened in my life, and I don't know. I feel like it's really hard for me to display that, which is probably why I'm usually backstage and not necessarily on stage, because I have a really hard time like connecting with that in order to like audition and things. So I kind of stick to more of, I guess, my strength. I don't know. I love being backstage, and I think at this point I get too nervous to be on stage anyway. But yeah, I mean, I love being detail oriented. I have a lot of people that tell me, like my boss currently at my job tells me that I have a very positive energy. Even though even though I know I've been through a ton of things. And he's like, he works really hard to help me like kind of build on that and like encourage me and make sure I'm in a good place, because he says it's really important like for our whole team, because I bring that kind of positive energy. So yeah, I feel like it's difficult sometimes to know what your strengths are. Like I know why I'm special, I guess, but I have trouble necessarily sharing that. If that makes sense.
Absolutely. I'm looking at a lot of heads nodding. Well, and here's why it's so critical, because like I said before, we're all storytellers. And the most valuable thing you can do is share a story that someone else doesn't have, to give it to somebody else, whether it be, maybe you're not the actor in the part, maybe you're not the director, maybe you're not even on stage, maybe you're simply talking to a person about something that they need to know, maybe you're advocating for somebody. Somebody needs to be able to translate. Communication, actors, directors, that's what we're doing, is communicating. All we're doing is finding a way to communicate. And the key to it is communication has two components, sender and receiver. I don't always know. I may be doing a ton of stuff. I may be big, I may be brash, but maybe the audience isn't getting it. Maybe they don't understand it. Maybe I am doing my best interpretation, talking about playing, Jermaine, talking about playing roles that you're not supposed to play. Maybe I'm directing someone who is playing a victim of an assault. And I say, well, they would behave this way because the data says, because the paper says, I read an article in my research that says, and you have somebody who shyly stands up at the back of the house and goes, not all of them. And you go, what? And they go, not all of them behave that way. Well, what do you know? Well, I don't want to go into details, but I know this. You've added your voice to that story. You've instantly, if the director is smart, if the actor is smart, if the collaborators are smart, if the storytellers are smart, they take that voice and say, there is somebody who's going to be sitting in the house who is going to be reached because we implemented that part of the story, because they got to see themselves in the story. You may be talking about how, I'll give you a big broad one, how Trump voters or Biden voters behave. Somebody may say, not all of them. Well, Trump voters don't go to theater. Of course they do. And you have to reach them too. They're a receiver. You can't send to one portion of the audience, Biden voters all behave this way. I can't send to one portion of the audience. I have to speak to everybody. Shannon, you would have to, I'm imagining you raise funds for arts organizations among Democrats and Republicans. Your storytelling tools are about talking to an audience, connecting to that person, so that connecting to that individual. If you're not open to the idea that there are other elements of the story that you don't have, that you can get from the community you build around it, then you're talking in a vacuum, and you're going to eventually find yourself performing only in front of your parents and friends, right? So I bring it up because what makes you special is valuable to this thing that connects us, the storytelling ability we have. And if you don't think it's true, think about the people who gravitate to you in your life. More often than not, the people who gravitate to us are different than us in some way. Because there's a piece of you that they need to fill up to complete them, to build on their storytelling. It's our nature to share it, to seek out those pieces that we don't have, to understand. Now, it's not always in our ability to know how to ask. And that's the tricky part. That's the part that as artists, we're supposed to do. As arts enthusiasts, we're supposed to do. We're supposed to know how to ask the Biden voter or the Trump voter, why do you see it differently? How is the experience for this kind of victim? What is the experience for a gay man? What is the experience for an African-American woman? That's the part that eludes us. Understanding why we're special and why we can get that out of the other party, why we can get them to receive when somebody else might not be able to. That's what makes us special. And why that's valuable is because you may be able to get them to come to the table. You may be able to get them to share in the experience of storytelling and to open themselves up to the idea that there are stories that they need to know that they don't have the information to already. So when we're off of this, I'm checking because I want to make sure that we have time to go back. When I try to approach a piece of theater, whether it be as an artistic director, as a director, as an actor, the first thing I do is after I've read the text and understand why I might be valuable to that story, what makes me special about telling this story, why you might want to hear my voice in addition to the playwrights, in addition to the directors, in addition to the other actors, is I go out and find out what pieces I don't have. Lots of pieces are to be found online or in books or in magazine articles, but where I find the best pieces for me is through people, other storytellers, not necessarily other actors, other storytellers. Hey, what's your story like this? We were doing Fences a couple of years ago, which was one of my favorite plays, and I had the fortune of playing Troy Maxson. And when I read it, I said, I want to do, when I went back to read it and said, I want to be in this, I want to work it out, because I realized this is just a story about a dad who doesn't have a rule book. He doesn't have a handbook. He's trying the best he can, as clumsily as he does it. And he is trying to figure out the best way to save his son. Now, in the time he lives in, and the world that he lives in, the level of oppression that he lives in, he does it by stomping out this boy's dream and saying, you'll never be a ball player. You get you a regular job, earn some money. The white man will never let you do all this stuff. And he crushes that boy from a 2020 perspective. And what I realized that I had to do in order to tell that story well is to talk to dads, and more specifically, to talk to mine. I had to ask him, why did you think this was the best way to raise me? Why did you think mama's boy was going to make me feel a different? Why did you, we got to get him in karate, he too soft. You know what I mean? That kind of guy. We had that kind of relationship. You too soft. You better learn how to do this. You sing and all that kind of silly, you better learn how to be manly. And I needed to know, what did you think how is that going to make me better? Because I'm living in a world of Dr. Phil, where everybody tells you you don't behave that way, and that's not how we raise children. And blah. But for somebody, that's the right answer. He didn't have a rule book. There's no manual that comes with me when I'm born. And so I had to understand, why did you feel like that was the best way to get that done? Do I agree that it was? No. Am I going to try to raise my son differently? Sure. But it doesn't hurt me to understand where this person's coming from, and maybe there's some value in my son being tougher. We learn every day because we are artists, and we're arts lovers, and we're open to the process. It's not about the pursuit of perfection, but it is about process. And as we're having this discussion, I'm thinking to myself, boy, that was a lot harder. Taking the steps to say, I would like to talk to you, Dad. I don't know if we're going to agree, but I want to hear your point of view. That first step of getting there is the hard thing, but it makes the storytelling valuable because I don't have to start from zero. And I don't mean as an actor, because I could have gone to somebody's book about it, but I mean as a person. I figured out, okay, that's why I disagree with it, because you implied that somehow I'm less manly because I don't do the things you do. And I don't think that's the value of a man. I grew up in a period of time, and I'm sharing these things with you because I'm hopefully somewhere going to hit my point. I grew up in the 80s, and I was a teenager in the 80s. And I remember having said this a lot. That's gay. That's gay. That's some gay stuff. And thinking it was a automatic kind of like, you're telling it's bad. And then having to learn from gay friends in theater what it sounded like, what it meant, what it felt like. These are people who had to come to me and say, I like you, so I don't think that you're trying to be a misogynist a-hole. But they shared that story with me. And because of it, I was able to go, oh, I hadn't heard it till just now. That in its core is what we're talking about as storytellers. My son, I'm teaching at home, and they're working on the idea of summarizing a story. And we were sitting down and talking about this concept. There's who, wants, but, so, then. Who, Johnny, wants to play basketball, but he can't find his basketball. So his dad buys him a new one. Then he gets to play basketball with his friends. Who, Troy Maxson, wants to be a good father, but he doesn't know how. So he squashes all the hope out of his son. Then his son resents him. And he dies. Who, Jerome, wants to be cool, but he thinks being cool is a false sense of masculinity. So he goes around spouting what's gay, then gets an education from an enlightened friend. It can be on stage. It can be in your living room. It can be at a coffee shop. You're telling stories all the time. You're communicating all the time. Even in your, what makes you special? I don't know. I don't have an answer. Eyes wide. But where you go in that storytelling, how you build on it, how you continue the journey and the process towards it is what matters to me. And that's what makes you special. The fact that you keep trying to tell the story. You keep trying to add a new voice. And it's not just a different voice. It's Shannon at 12, Shannon at 25, Shannon at 35, because those are different voices in the story too. So let's change our question about what makes you special. Let me see, how am I doing? Okay. I would like you to tell me a story about you. So that's the who. Wants, but, so, then. It could be where you are right now. It could be where you were 20 years ago. It can be where you plan to go in the future. I don't care what story you tell. But I'd like you to bring what's special about you, your special voice, to us as an audience and tell us a story. Eyes are big. What y'all think I was going to do? Come up here and talk about say this and thou and thou. I figure you know how to do that kind of stuff. And if you don't, you probably don't want to learn it from me. I want to hear your story. I'm going to steal probably some of what you do. I don't do anything but add people's stories to mine. That's the nature of being an actor and a director. But I do want to know your stories. Yes, Jermaine.
All right, I'll try this. So when I was 2, I had polio and lost the ability to walk. So I wanted to be normal and accepted and popular. And that couldn't happen. I wasn't any of those things. Let me think. That's the, give me the list again.
You've got the who, you've got the wants, you've got the but.
And then,
well, you're at the but, I guess.
Okay. But it wasn't going to happen. I couldn't be accepted. I couldn't be normal. I felt very much fringe. As I reached my teenage years, I had some surgeries that helped stabilize my walking and things like that. And I began to develop friendships that seemed to accept me for who I was. And at some point, I learned to embrace the difference that I couldn't fit into the so-called normal healthy crowd, but I could sort of fit into the fringe group, which turned out to be pretty fun. And I think that those experiences have helped me connect with a lot of people who have been through losses of various kinds. And has allowed me to do the kind of work that I did as a physician, to connect to people who were suffering.
That was a gorgeous story. It was a gorgeous story. Who, Jermaine, wanted to be normal, but it wouldn't be. So she had some surgeries, then learned she was normal all along. And get it, and it doesn't, I'm emotional listening to you tell a story because there's a million kids that need that story. Hell, I need it. You're a valuable storyteller. You're already on your way. Now, acting it out, that's something we're not going to do in a Zoom meeting in 90 minutes. But telling the story is the hard part because it took you a minute to say, okay, I'll go. Right? Thank you so much. Who's up? They don't all have to be, it can be whatever story you want to tell.
Well, darn, that's hard to follow. But I'll try. Who? I was an only child for the first 7 years of my life. And they say if you're an only child until you're 5, you sort of have that mindset. And discovered as a kid that I was just a really big ham. I don't know if I just wanted attention or I was comfortable being in front of people and kind of, ta-da, but I was. And, it was about 1980, 82, somewhere in there. Annie was big on Broadway, and we were doing A Christmas Carol in 5th grade, and my teacher discovered that Lee, who had been cast as just a random Cratchit child, could sing "The Sun Will Come Out Tomorrow." So someplace in the midst of A Christmas Carol, the youngest Cratchit child busted out into,
Annie, awesome.
Yeah, so that's pretty much where I discovered that I love to perform, that I could connect with an audience, and that just brought me loads of joy. Did it all, did children's theater in Dallas, and was active in all the way through high school and college. And fast forward to my parents here. So that was my want, was I wanted to connect with an audience. I wanted to continue in the theater, to express myself and to bring joy to people. But being the nice little middle-class girl that I was, my parents were frightened of that, didn't like that, actively discouraged, and did not support that dream. And being the good, obedient kid that I was, I made sure I had backup plans and did other things. So I eventually went on to get my master's degree in education, got married to a really great guy, had 2 kids, and had a wonderful 25 years where I did absolutely nothing in the theater. And I continued to sing and do stuff, but nothing formally. So then COVID happened, and I was working at a church, and this has been a really strange year. People are not connecting anymore. Youth are not connecting. Everybody's locked down. Because it's a challenge for teachers. This is a very difficult time. So the job that I had came to an end, and I'm sitting here just having celebrated my 50th birthday, and I'm thinking, you know what? If not now, when? Life may have just handed me a gift. So in the midst of all of this, I decided that I wanted to get back into doing my first love. I don't know what the then is. So what's the then? I got to the so. Then I went ahead and auditioned for a play for the first time in 25 years, and actually got cast in one of the pivotal roles. And that has brought me more joy over the last month and a half, and hope it continues. So
I think that's an amazing story.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot. I hear that a lot. And I mean,
I don't think it's an unusual story. And I think there is something very transformative about reaching a point in your age where it's like, all the things I sort of had to do, or I felt that I had to do, I did. And I get to do what I want a little bit.
I heard the story of, and you tell me what you think. I heard the story of Lee Miller, who wanted to be a performer, wanted to be out in the spotlight, wanted to shine, but her parents didn't want that for her. And so she left it behind, thinking she would have a happier, better life. Then she discovered that she didn't stop wanting it. She sacrificed it.
Perhaps, or it was fear. I'm going to give it a healthy dose of fear too.
That's fair. That's fair.
Sure.
She decided she sacrificed it and was maybe afraid of it, but found her way back to it because she didn't lose, because she'd never lost the love for it.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know. And I don't know if this is a cultural thing, like kind of a middle of America. I have some of my, thankfully my mom was supportive, but there was a lot of talk of real jobs.
Oh yeah.
And money making and earning a living and but thankfully my mom was not one of those nobody's ever going to let you kind of a person.
Well, and in my parents' defense, they grew up in the Depression. Children of the Depression anyway. So that's survival. You don't.
And they're not wrong. It's like we talked about before. There's no handbook. They weren't wrong. I don't want you to starve. I don't want you to be hungry. That's fair.
I told my kids a very different story, though. So for whatever that's worth.
Swing the other side of the pendulum.
Swing the other side. Well, someone's got to do it. Why not you? Somebody can. Why can't it be you?
Yeah, see, I'm an actor, and my wife constantly says, I think he's gonna be about our son. I think he's gonna be an actor. And I'm like, not if I can help it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to talk him out of it every chance. Oh, law, son. Have you ever seen? Let me show you this medical book. Ooh. Can't do that. He'll do what works for him.
Oh, please, my husband's a pastor. If either of our kids wanted to go into ministry, we're like,
Run away.
run very far. Don't do it. Please don't.
Religion.
No, right?
That's both awesome
It's a
and scary at
calling.
the same
Don't go
time.
looking for it. Yeah.
Okay. That's awesome. Thank you so much. Who's got a story?
I have a story.
It gets a little easier now.
Yeah, the first few people have gone. It's a little easier now. Okay. And like my story has 2 sad parts, but it ends happy. I think. Okay. So I wanted to have a second child, but we almost lost our daughter when we had our first child. So when I got pregnant again, we were terrified. And we actually lost it about a week later, but it actually led us to know that we really do want another one. And we're actually really happy about trying. So it was difficult, but then it basically let us focus on each other and what we have, and kind of put us all in a place where we actually could welcome another child if that were to happen. So it's a short story.
Some of the best stories in the world are short stories. Aaron, that story is so valuable for so many reasons, because I know tons of people, including myself, who are like, there are lots of people who don't have children as easily as we did. And there are lots of people who, for them, childbirth is a blessing and not a curse. There are lots of people who are like, oh, we got pregnant, or this messed up my life. And I always think to myself, it's so easy to kind of blame, as I get older and I start to see this, it's so easy to kind of blame, well, I had kids, so this is why I had to give up all these things for some people, there's never a moment where it's giving up anything. It's giving up everything to have the child. Maybe you didn't get to be on Broadway, or you get to be a movie star, or whatever you thought was going to happen in your life. And so taking that blessing and being okay with it, and saying, that is the joy of my life, and to be able to say, it made me open my eyes up to the idea that I do want this. That's a revelation, my dear. And to be able to tell that story is hard, but it's that step into telling it that connects us. We're all connected to you in a way that we hadn't been, because you shared your story. That's the shared human experience we were talking about before. No acting involved, by the way. So the fear of putting on somebody else's character should go away, because you just shared an actual story, one that belonged to you. Nobody threw anything. There were no boos. You did not get an award for it. That's the best storytelling I know, my friend. Thank you. Who's up? Come on, everybody's got to tell a story before we leave.
I can tell one.
Yes.
Yeah, and before I move on, I would just like to say that just connected, your story, Aaron, just connected Jermaine and I, because Jermaine and I each have one precious grandchild. It was very hard to come by. We shared a fertility symbol. I passed it on to her when my daughter was done with it. Anyway, that wasn't my story, but yeah, that connected us to you. Yeah, we can totally understand that. So my story is, when I was growing up, I was a middle child of 5 girls, all girls. My father did not appreciate having girls, and he belittled us a lot. And so I had a lot of like psychological, abuse, and I grew up with pretty low self-esteem. And not only that, but I lived in Ohio and we never went anywhere because my parents were busy, you know, just putting food on the table and all that. And I spent a lot of my time in my head dreaming about traveling and having adventures and going places and doing things. And when I was 19, then my cousin Betty had moved away to Houston, and she called me up and said she was going to get married and would I be a bridesmaid in her wedding. And so I decided in my head that that was it. I was going to move away. I was going to go be a bridesmaid and just stay. And my dad told me, no, I couldn't do that. I was too young, but I just ignored him and I quit my job. I saved money. I quit my job. I packed all the clothes I wanted to take with me. And I just went to Houston. My cousin moved out of her apartment with her sister and I moved in, and I got a job at a bank, and I didn't even have a car in Houston, which was crazy. I had to hike miles to get a bus every day to work. And for a while I worked 2 jobs. I worked at the Astrodome. I was a space ed at night, and I worked at a bank during the day. So it was, and I had adventures. And I ended up traveling. I've traveled a lot since then. And I realized that I was not the stupidest person in the world. And I went to college and I had all kinds of adventures. But I think if I hadn't left home, I would never have. I totally reevaluated myself. It was a great adventure. Did I cover all the bases? I think I did.
Yeah, Marine. Well, and again, you tell me if I received what you sent.
Okay.
I, Marine, wanted to be loved by my father. I wanted to be loved and special, and particularly to be loved by my father. But because he was disappointed with having girls, I wasn't. I was belittled. So at the first opportunity I could find that made sense, I left that environment and then had a wonderful adventure.
Yep, I did pretty much. I feel kind of bad too, because he died with a lot of information I never got because I had such a bad relationship with him. Like, he fought in World War II, and I really wish I knew more. And he was an artist. I didn't even go near art until I went to college. I didn't think I was worthy, but eventually I did.
Wow.
I know. Weird.
No, I mean, but these common stories, like, it's so, I love this exercise because it's so like, our stories are so varied but shared. Mm-hmm. It's like, I find, like, I'm like, oh my God, I don't want my dad to die before I get these things. Why are you afraid to take an opportunity to say, okay, I want to stand up, or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And that you're having that experience and you can teach me, yeah, don't mess around and miss it, but also go when you get the chance. Take your stuff. Don't think you're stuck in where you have to go. Go. When you were, what age when you left?
19. I was 19.
Man, you was trying to pry me out of my folks' house at 19. I'm like, my world out there is hard.
My sisters that are twins, they're 2 years younger than me. My mother was looking for apartments for them when they were about 25 or 26.
That sounds about
30,
right.
I don't know.
That sounds a little bit more like. I love it. Thank you. Who's next?
I'll go.
Please do.
Okay. I grew up in a very ultra-conservative, ultra-religious home, church, school situation. A lot of restrictions, and I can identify with several of the things a couple of you other ladies have mentioned. And I wanted my freedom. But I was very young with few resources, and including confidence and knowledge and skills. So I left home at age 18 when there was no money for me to attend the only Christian school that my parents approved of. that I left home and moved many states away, and hooked up with a boy that my family approved of, safe, a nice boy that was attending a school and would be getting a degree. Then I married him, and together we moved here to Oklahoma, and that is what began the rest of my life, where I, a lot of things like Aaron, out of heartbreak through the years, but through that decision to marry that boy and move with him here to Oklahoma, brought me to where I am today, where I'm able to sit here with all of you and talk about storytelling, and was able to meet the folks that I wouldn't have otherwise have met through the years, and so that was a gift.
Yeah. Thank you, Miss Chris. Thank you. Is there anybody else who, I'm just trying to see how we're doing, that wants to go? I'd love to hear your stories. I'll be on here all night if you got stories to tell.
Chris has tried, I think, a couple of times.
Chris.
Oh, I had tried earlier. I didn't want to be last, but I may be. There was this kid that gave his mother fits during childbirth, and luckily they both made it out of that alive, and they were close. He could have been called a mama's boy. I think he probably was, and his mother thought he was very shy. So she got him involved at Mummers Theater School when he was a youngster, there on Main Street. And that was magic for him, because he didn't have to be shy. He could be anybody he wanted to be. And he was lucky enough to have a lot of good teachers that helped him in that regard, and he thought he was ready for the world, but he had some trouble. He wanted to be a hedonist, so he did. But he made it out of that alive, and during all that time, he had searched and searched for, I guess you would call it, love. And he was lucky enough, after making it through all of that, late in his life, to find that person and just celebrated 5 years of his first and only marriage. So unfortunately, we're having to exist in separate parts of the house because we're concerned that one of us might have been exposed. So that's a challenge, and I already got her dinner. So, but that's my story. That kid that went to St. Anthony's in a hearse that doubled as a ambulance back in the day. Thanks.
Wow. Thank you. Is there anybody else who wants to share their story?
I can share mine.
Please do.
Okay, so when I was about 3 years old, I believe it was, my mother took me to the zoo, and we were over at the eagle exhibit. And I'm not a big fan of eagles, but the eagle was pretty. And I noticed a zookeeper came up, and he was getting ready to feed the eagle. And he could have gone on his way and ignored me and fed the eagle, but he chose to come over, and he showed me what the eagle was going to eat, explained everything to me, and then told me the eagle's story. and explained to me why she couldn't fly and that she had actually been shot. So she was in a small enclosure because they were afraid she would move around and hurt herself. So I remember when he walked away, I thought, that's what I want to do with my life. I want to be a teacher so I can help people understand the stories of animals. But I also wanted to be that zookeeper to get to go in and feed the eagle because that was the coolest thing possible. So fast forward through my whole life, everyone said, so what do you want to be when you grow up? And I would say a teacher and a zookeeper. And they would say, Melissa, you can't do both. You have to choose. And I was that really obnoxious kid that would say, just shut up and watch me because I'm going to do it regardless. So fast forward a few years, and I found a volunteer program at the zoo for teenagers. So I got to help volunteer at the zoo, taking care of the animals. And I actually found myself working side by side with that same keeper who I met when I was 3 years old. So later on, the zoo actually hired me. And I've been working there for 22 years as a teacher with animals. Now, the best part was I was actually teaching a class one day and I told this story and that man was in the audience. He had no idea. And I pulled his picture up on the screen and he burst into tears. And that was the funniest moment to me, watching this grown man cry over some story I had told, but explaining to him that something so minor he did set forth my entire future.
Wow. Wow. That was fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that story. I don't want to miss anybody who would like to share their story, so please speak up.
I'll share one. So when I first started teaching band, I had no idea about classroom management. And I was teaching down in Texas and I had these classes with like 80 kids. It was middle school and I didn't know what to do. And I was really focused on quality because when you're in North Texas and you have band down there, it's like, they better sound good. They better be perfect. You're aiming for perfect sound all the time. And so I was just racking my brain. What do I do? What do I do? And I'd ask some of the other band directors and one person even said, just yell at them. And I tried it all and nothing worked. And so in my quest to find, what do I do? How do I make this work? What I decided that I wanted to focus on was my favorite thing about my 3 best friends. And I looked at my friend, Laura, and she has qualities like you've said, Maureen, about yourself. She's like an adventurer and she's spontaneous. And I looked at my friend, Megan, and she gets so excited about the smallest things and her excitement is just so contagious. And then I looked at my other friend, Nicole, who happened to be one of the other band directors in the room. And she really cared about every single kid. She was not a disciplinarian at all. She just cared so much and she was so kind. And she was working with the band that was like remedial band. Like these kids did not pay attention for 1 second in the 6th grade. They were not good, but she had the patience of a saint and she would give them 1,000 tries and she would always be smiling the whole time. And so what I decided is I want to be the best in the people that I think are the best. And every day after that, when I was teaching, I tried to collect all of those traits and put them in myself. And I failed a whole lot of the time. But what I found is that after that, in every year going forward, it was so much easier when I could just be the person that I admired.
Play into your inspiration of these people that they had given you. That's amazing. That's amazing. Here's what I hope you walk away with. As an artistic director, what I believe my job is 1, exploring the art, 2, encouraging the artist, and 3, understanding the audience. I don't have to agree with them, but but I have to understand them. I have to see them as people. I have to know that they too have stories, and that the stories we're telling will find a way into their hearts and into their lives and into their dinner tables and their cup of coffee the next morning. Because if I'm going to choose the storyteller's life, then my most valuable tool is putting my life in my storytelling, because someone can relate to it. Every one of you told a story that I could relate to, and it's going to fuel me and inspire me in the future. I'm going to tell the story of the kid who wanted to do a job that everybody said nobody can do both of those jobs, who did it over time. I'm going to tell of the story of the person who wanted to be better in the classroom and reach out to kids and tried every technique that everybody had given her, but she took the influences in her life and shared those things that impressed upon her, and she was able to impress upon them. I'm going to want to tell I'm going to find a story that connects to the kid who was maybe a little too shy and maybe a mama's boy, and wanted to go out into the world and conquer it and be over that shyness. And it took him this long journey to find and connect in love and life. We tell these stories because they connect us. They build in us a shared humanity. And it just starts with being able to connect those stories to other human beings, to other people. And that way I see them in you. I get to see those characters that I'm playing and go, you know who that is? That's Chris. There's a little bit of Jermaine's story in there. I want to see if I can't find a way to tell that story, because I've seen that story in real life connect to other human beings. I'm understanding how the audience connects. Everybody got a little teary at time at some point tonight. I want to do that to somebody else. I hope that whether you're an actor, because I mean, I know this class was never going to be all actors or all directors or all anything, but I hope that you walk away with that understanding of our shared humanity, but also walk away with the courage to share your stories, to help somebody not start from zero, to understand that you are not just anything. Your story, your voice is valuable and special. That's perspective. That's why it's important. That's why representation matters. I want to see you. I want to see me. I want to see transgender. I want to see LGBTQ. I want to see you and understand you, so that we stop categorizing and breaking us down to one little nugget and realize we're part of a larger human story, that we share DNA. That's the day.
Thank you, Jerome.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was an amazing class. Yeah, thank you all so much for being here and participating. This is number 4 in our series of 8. We have 4 more of these coming up. Next week we have Rex Doherty from Washington, D.C. After that we have Josh Kane from New York City. After that we have Kendrick Green, who is both LA and Toronto. A good friend of mine. You may have seen him on The Walking Dead or on Star Trek Discovery. So he's going to be bringing some film and television expertise. And then finally we have James Ricks in Virginia on December 21st, right before Christmas. So please join us for any or all of those. Tell your friends. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing your stories. This has been an amazing evening. And once again, thank you to Jerome for all that you do. And you guys stay safe out there. Be healthy, and happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving to you all. Thank you all so
Great.
much. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Jerome. Thank you,
Thank
Tyler.
you.
Good night.
Thank you all for sharing. Oh, that was awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, it was nice meeting all of you.
Hope to see you again.